We are Southern Illinois.
It's 5-on-4 right now. Casey Lake getting back. Mayo near corner, 3 in front of Evansville's bench. Just rims off. Prince on the cleanup for 2. That's what you do, Prince Saluki. Clean it up. There's points there for you.
And it started on the defensive end when he switched and get a good shot check on Moeller. 2 great possessions by Prince.
It's time for Saluki basketball.
Mayo with 5, off the Prince with 4. Prince into the lane, attacks, crosses over, off the glass for 2 more. Prince Saluki, have yourself a day.
Now, here is the voice of the Salukis, Luke Martin.
Here we are, Saluki Nation. Arch Madness this week as Southern Illinois will take on the Drake Bulldogs on Thursday. Series was split at 1 game apiece. There were 2 very competitive games, and you can only imagine that is what we are in store for again here on Thursday. We'll, of course, preview that game. We're going to dive in, of course, to the All-Conference Awards. By the time this podcast comes out, the All-Conference Awards would have already been announced, but we don't know them at the time of this recording as we are doing them, other than the most improved team, the all-bench team, which was released here on Tuesday. We'll recap the Evansville win here in a moment to start off the podcast, but alongside the Hall of Famer Rodney Watson, I am Luke Martin here in the Wells Production Studio here on campus in Carbondale. Coach Watson, of course, back in his studio there in Evansville. And speaking of Evansville, Coach Watson, what a win for this Saluki team. And, we'll get into the win and what Southern did well in this game. And I'm not just doing this just to do it. I do feel it's very important to mention this too. For what Evansville had to go through this last weekend to beat Valpo the way they did, trailing at halftime, come back to win it, and especially in the fashion they did with A.J. Casey making that shot. And they gave Southern everything they could handle on that Sunday. And it's like we described on the radio. It was for the first 36 minutes of that game. Yeah, maybe there were moments you could tell that Evansville was a little tired, but not really. But, man, in the final 4 minutes, it really showed, and that's when Southern was able to ultimately pull away and win that game 81-67.
I heard Coach Ragland on a television broadcast yesterday talking about it. It gets them ready for what they really have to understand going into Thursday, Friday for them. But give them a lot of credit. That's a very offensively talented team. A.J. Casey had a terrific weekend. He's a fine player. Gosh, he can do so many things on that offensive end. Evansville's not a real good defensive team. I mean, that doesn't shock anybody. That's not a knock. It's just where it is. But to play with truly 7 guys, some of it is in their control. Most of it's not in their control to have such a small bench. Those guys played, I'll go as far to say 78.5 minutes. The timeout that led to a turnover on a side out of bounds play was about, and you mentioned it, man, it looked like they're starting to crack, and then the next 5 possessions came up empty for them. But Evansville is another team, now they're going to, they're kind of shrugging their shoulders right now. It's like, so what? Our record is what it is. Our conference record is, our seed is what it is. We're going to go play now. And they're not going to be easy. It's not going to be easy on Thursday with that game.
No, and Northern Iowa knows that. Coach Jacobson knows that. I can fully guarantee you that as they get ready for the turn. Of course, we're going to look at the Arch Madness bracket. We'll kind of give you our thoughts on what the matchups look like and the potential road that is to come here in St. Louis. But continuing with the game and now looking at it from a Saluki perspective, Drew Steffi, he was the Kim Pong game MVP. Thought that was well-deserving for Drew because, man, he shot the ball so well in the game. Drew was 2 of 3 from 2, 4 of 5 from 3. How about this, Coach Watson? 2 of his last 3 games, he is 8 of 10 from 3. That is a really good sign for Drew Steffi and for SIU going into the tournament. But then Prince Saluki, we can't speak enough about what he did in that game. And we said it point blank to him after. Coach Nagy said it to us as well. Look, we try not to be hyperbole, to make things more than what it is, okay? But if Prince Saluki can play with that type of effort and impact winning, and that's going for loose balls, that's saving balls going out of bounds to get an extra possession. Doesn't necessarily mean that he has to score and get what was his second career double-double in his whole college career, first as a Saluki. That version of Prince, if that's the consistency factor we get from him here in the last week, man, that's going to make a lot of Saluki fans smile. SIU is going to be in a great spot if that's the Prince Saluki that shows up in St. Louis.
and the success Southern had from the time I was a part of it back in even in '89. But certainly when we won the tournament in '93, Mirko Pavlovic was that guy. Now he made a three, but he did the biggest play of the game late in that game was an offensive rebound, a tip and an offensive rebound that he got, and then we connected off out of a free throw. And those are the things that Prince did extremely well. And we talk about Caden Hawkins throughout the season, and Caden doesn't get a lot of playing time, but one thing about Caden, when he comes in, whether it's a way back in October or anytime during the season, his teammates play at Caden's level because Caden plays with a lot of intensity and energy in his limited minutes. Well, the same says for Prince, especially in the game on Sunday. And I think the games concern me. Every game concerns a coach or former coach, but the game concerned me at the 16-minute mark because I thought Southern was allowing Evansville to play at a pace that really helped them, conserve energy and make it a 10-minute game at the end of the game or a 5-minute game. And I'll tell you, the play that sticks out of my mind that kind of flipped the switch in the first half was around the 16-minute mark, maybe a little after, when Damian Mayo and Prince were involved in a ball screen situation, a two-man game up above the top of the key with A.J. Casey, who was being guarded by Prince, and Leif Moeller, the fine freshman from Germany that was being guarded by Mayo. And it was a two-man game, and those guys really they really were physical. And those two guys are the physical components of SIU. Ended up where Prince got the steal. He went around the backside of Casey, who he'd switched back on a loose pass, went down and dunked the ball. And that was the point where you commented that a little bit of bickering going on between the aces. Those are things that were really impactful. And getting back to my point about our success in the conference tournament, seems like whether it's Randall Falker in '06 going right through Patrick O'Brien with physicality. I mean, Randall wasn't a perimeter shooter. He was a power guy. Not a great free throw shooter. If we got 1 out of 2 from him, it was a good possession. But, man, what a tough power guy he was. And I can kind of pick and choose some others along the way. But Prince, to your point, is very important. He's been important all year. And it was really fun to see him play with the consistency that we've been just yearning to see.
And the team-wise, what was really big, 15-2 run to virtually end the game to get them to that in that last 4 minutes of the game. That was huge. It stretched from the 5-minute mark to virtually the end of the game. And then a 10-0 run at the end of the first half. So think about how Southern ended the first half and then ended the game. The Salukis ended it extremely strong, and those have been two areas at times. I would say Southern, even though there's been a lot of close games that haven't gone their way at times, I do believe, and I don't have the number right in front of me, maybe you would agree or disagree, but I think Southern's end of the games have been better than end of halves at times this year, more consistently than not. What was great to see in that game when it mattered, they had two really big runs to end it. And then the other comment I have on the game before we wrap, Coach Watson, is this is where, we use so much fun analytical data, and Ken Palm is great, and I love it. This is where sometimes it can get wacky. Southern's winning probability in the game started nearly 80% when the game started. As the game went out, it never got below 70%.
Wow.
Are you telling me? And you and I both know, there was our confidence level was never 70% or higher through the duration of the game. That's where how those stuff get configured and figured out. That's where, hey, it's great we have it. It's an awesome tool to look at it, and you can look at the Ken Palm game and see what I'm referring to, and I'll show it on the screen for those that watch this visually. But the lowest it ever got was 72.3% winning percentage for Southern. That to me. That's the craziness about the analytical data and stuff. Because, man, if you would have pulled us there, we were a little nervous there in the final 8 minutes or so of that game.
Shows you computers don't have a heartbeat, that's for sure. Let's talk about the end of the first half. And it was more than just the terrific basket that Jalen Haynes got or the foul that probably shouldn't have happened that Evansville created on its own. It was even more than the timeout coach called with 32 seconds to get everybody on the same page. It really started about the 2-minute mark when Southern got everyone out of the game except for Drew Steffi. They finished the last 2 minutes in a spot where it was the guys on the bench, and they did an outstanding job of finishing off those last 2 minutes. They went, I think it was a +4. I want to say when they got that group in at the 2 minute mark, they finished at a +4, up 11, of course, with a really nice play at the end by Jalen. But I just thought, all in all, the way the game was played, and whether Ken Palm said we had it in the bag all along or not, Southern really went out and earned that game, and they really stepped up their energy level, especially certainly midway through the first half on. And Evansville never went away except for the last minute and a half.
Yeah, the last minute and a half is when Southern really took that full control, and the Salukis get the win on the road against the Evansville Purple Aces, 81-67. And Coach Watson, I tweeted this out after the game as well on Monday, just kind of going mulling through all the different, what does this mean for SIU? And we all get that, the schedules are all different. And look, Southern had a front-loaded league schedule. I think everybody can agree to that. But when you win at Illinois State, when you win at Northern Iowa, there's been some good wins here for Southern down the stretch. So when you think of this in its entirety, Southern goes 7-3 in the final 10 games of the Valley schedule. That's the most wins that Southern has acquired in the second half of a Valley season since when you were on staff in 2007, when you ended that second half of the year going 9-0. Now, remember, the league schedule used to be 18 games. So the first half was 9, second half was 9. It's the most wins that Southern has acquired definitely during the 10-game halves, if you want, of the 20-game schedule. They did go 6-4 to end 2023 under Coach Mullins. That team went 14-6 in the league. But no other time since 2007, the Salukis have won 7 or more in a half of a season. Again, we all know all schedules are not made the same, and especially home and away when you factor in that. And this year, how many days you played games in a certain amount of schedule. But to me, that's important, right? I mean, that's a really big deal for this team.
Yeah, I like what you just said right there. When you think back on that stretch of 5 or 6 games every 3 days and how Southern was able to fight through that, I think Coach Sharnowski's done a great job with – Coach Shonak has done a great job with conditioning with this team. And I saw it in November when they played the 5 games on the road, when they played in Florida, back-to-back games. And it shows up now. Southern's strength, their conditioning really came out in that tough February stretch. Everybody did it. Now, everybody was playing 5 games in 15, 16 days, whatever it was. Folks, that's a hard stretch because you get bumps and bruises on top of it. All 11 teams have bumps and bruises. And for Southern to really stay locked in, man, it was impressive. And, it goes back to that bus ride, man, at the airport and just, the mental frame. We're not going to go into detail with it again about what we saw after the Northern Iowa win, waiting for the charter flight. But where you really see conditioning come or go is in players' attitudes and their disposition. And, man, Southern did a great job. Man, 6 road wins in a league. That wins the league for him. We talk about how critical it is to win at home, and we all know that. And this team has been better on the road than at home. But, playing on the road is really, really hard for a lot of reasons. And this team, they sure seem comfortable being away from the house.
There is only one team in the league that won more on the road. It was Belmont. They went 7-3 in their 10 league games. But like you said, Coach Watson, the team and the program, they've talked about it. What they're most disappointed in is no doubt what their record's been at home. That's something that they, trust me, it absolutely irks them that they were not better at home this year, which in our league 4-6 in your home games. And then even if you flip that home record, imagine how different it could be in terms of the seeding, which we don't need to go down that road. But to your point of how hard it is to win on the road, I mean, that shows you how hard it is to win on the road, and especially the last day of the season. Belmont, with that large consideration, I know very low, but still it is reachable for them. That was an important game against Illinois State and a tough loss for them to take at the end of the year, and the Salukis hope that they will see Belmont at the end. But yes, to your point, no doubt, hard to win on the road, and at the Salukis, only 3 teams in the league this year won 6 or more road games. Those three teams were Belmont 7-3, UIC 6-4, and then SIU was 6-4. And all three of those teams are on the same side of the bracket. So we'll see how it kind of all shakes out when it gets there. Before we talk about the bracket and get into kind of the all conference talk and all the fun stuff, Coach Watson, I do want to bring up how the league has looked since that weekend in January that the Salukis got snowed in Evansville. That was January 26th. It was supposed to be the date when the Salukis were going to come back or potentially play Evansville on that Monday. And here's how Bartorvik has how the Valley looks since then. Again, I have it up for those that are watching this visually on the screen. Belmont still in first in the league, 61st in the country in that time span at 8-2 over that stretch. Northern Iowa is placed as the second best team in that stretch, 62nd in the country, 6-4 record over that stretch. The third best team in the league at that time, or in that time frame, is SIU. 80th in the country is where Bartorvik has Southern during that time span, 8-3 record in that time. The only team that has won as many games as SIU since that snowy weekend in Evansville is Belmont at 8-2. Again, numbers are numbers. You can look at them and tweak them and make them that say whatever story you want it to share. But in terms of the last month, it is undeniable. Southern Illinois, and they have the longest winning streak as well out of anybody in the league right now going into Arch Madness. It's undeniable, Coach Watson. SIU's heading into this tournament in as better of a spot than I think we could have envisioned a month ago before these numbers started to take fruition.
Certainly strength of schedule is a part of that. I mean, and that takes something to consider. You go back and look at the Indiana State game on the road, and we, by coaches' evaluation, didn't feel like they played well. Scored 80 points, gave up 65 to a team that can really hang some numbers, even though they're not a good defensive team in the Sycamores. But even that game, I thought, was the beginning of what looked like, man, Southern is starting to play with some consistency. Now, we turned it over. We gave up some buckets. We gave up some rebounding, even though one guy didn't give up any rebounds that night in Rollins-Aligbe. But I look at that one, and certainly, even before the snow, the Illinois State game on the road, man, that was a gritty, tough 54-50 game where we MMA'd those guys, man. We just outfought them all the way to the end. But Northern Iowa on the road, you can't have weakness and win at Northern Iowa. You cannot. You don't have to be perfect. Arizona played Iowa State last night, and they're probably going to say they played about as well as they could have. But there's not a perfect game. But there's just so many things we can point to in that stretch from that snow till now where the big thing for me is we talked about it, just how hard Southern played in Iowa for 80 straight minutes. And they came back home and played hard again. And then you have to play hard at Evansville. And if you think we're overrating this win at Evansville, look at UIC, who we all now have a lot of respect for. They go to Indiana State. You talk about something on the line. I mean, they not only have a number 2 seed on the line, they got an NIT bid on the line. And in addition to it, and couldn't get it done, and they got popped. It's just, that's why I brought up Indiana State first. I mean, Southern has done some good stuff. And I keep thinking about that bus trip, and I think about where those guys' heads are. And I was worried when this whole NIL thing came out, and I mentioned on one of our podcasts about everybody get out of the locker room except for the players and the coaches. Well, congratulations, you people, for leaving the locker room, because apparently you have. And I mean this, man. I want to congratulate anybody that could have screwed this up that didn't. And Southern is really in a good spot. I got a kick out of Coach getting on Jalen in the game the other day, but I didn't get a kick out of him. I'm like, dang, man, he is getting on that young kid about not taking a shot. And he answered it beautifully. Oh, Jalen can handle me. I loved his answer because, and you know what? Jalen can handle him. And that's kind of me getting out of the locker room. Like, that's what I mean. It's like, we got to look at that coach, let them dudes play. And because that was an indicator. It's like, man, he's on that young dude. What did he do? How did he respond? He made a back-breaking 2 to finish off the half. That's how he responded. And Coach was right on the money. He goes, Jalen can handle me. And I just loved that answer. I really like where Southern is going into this tournament.
And I think maybe you twisted your words a little bit, but just to clarify, when you said, I think you said the Illinois State win came before the snow. It was after the snow, because Illinois State, the win at Illinois State was February 3rd.
Wow.
That was in the early portions of February. So, I mean, but again, those are all games that for this Saluki team of, I mean, you go on the road and you win where they've won. And now the Belmont game was the one well before the snow. That was obviously in early January. And that was one of their first games without Nick McLean, too, which is amazing. And I'm so glad Coach Jacobson brought this up. And I love it when we get a little bit on tangents here on our podcast. This is one of them when you open up that door. But what I don't think we've done a good job, and I include you and me in this, Coach Watson, is I was hearing Coach Jacobs on the conference call going into the tournament. And he was talking about SIU specifically, and he goes, "Man, we know how good Kelron House." And I'm paraphrasing a little bit of what Coach Jake said, but he said, "We know how good Kelron House is. Like, he missed key games for SIU where they could have won a few more games." And I just remembered in the moment we were so frustrated that you don't win at home, 73-68 against Belmont, a team you had a lead on at the under 4-minute media timeout. What I keep forgetting, Q did not play in that game. And we know how important that guy has been, especially here in the last month. Again, if you're looking for reasons and going, hey, what are ways where you are feeling really good about yourself going into this tournament? Look, you had 2 really close games to Drake, and you better take them seriously and not look at a 9-game losing streak going into the end of the year. Because if you're focused on a 9-game losing skid and think this thing is going to be easy on Thursday at 3:30, your season's going to be over by 5 o'clock in St. Louis and be the first team sent home. But all of that being said, there are so many times where I got to get out of our own way of being like, man, look at what this team has done without some really big pieces. And now look what they've done when they've been about as healthy as you possibly could be without just Isaiah Stafford, who, of course, is out for the year.
I completely forgot Q didn't even play in some league games. I mean, that's a great point. And gosh, I didn't know Illinois State game was after that. We got snowed in at the DoubleTree for a couple of beautiful nights. My point on that is the season goes fast when you look back. Man, where'd it go? But at the same time, you and I have been on that road with this Saluki team, and I'm an old guy, so my days get a little bit wacko, but it's really amazing how they fought through that November long road schedule, and then they fought through a front-loaded league schedule. And again, you said exactly right. Hey, if you play the tough teams early, you're going to play the bottom half later. I mean, it's all good. It's just like, well, we played a bunch of road games. Well, that means you're going to play a bunch of home games coming up because it's going to even out. But your point about Q and him not being there with Belmont, completely forgot that. And again, I'll come back to say this team has really started to figure themselves out and their roles. We'll say it again with Prince. If he continues to play the way he did in the Evansville game, if that is what he can really bring to this team, along with what everyone else does, because everybody's scouted. It's not like Jake said. I mean, everybody knows everybody. Gosh, I like where this team's at.
And he missed the Valpo game on the road too, which of course was a really tough start to that game. The first half is one of the worst halves, and probably off the top of my head, the worst half that Southern has played all year. But then came back and played really well to make it a close game, 69-63. That was part of 4 losses in a row. Q got hurt late in that Drake game and then had to miss those next 2 games. That maybe was also the benefit of that weekend in Evansville getting snowed out, was allowed more rest time for Kelron to be able to come back and play against Northern Iowa, which ultimately that was a game that kind of started to spearhead this thing in the positive direction for SIU. But again, those Bartorvik rankings and seeing where Southern's at, no doubt feels like they are in a really good spot going in here to Arch Madness. Before we get to the bracket, Coach Watts, obviously the all-conference teams, et cetera, will come out after we record this, so we don't know what's going to happen necessarily as we get into it here. But, one of the areas we did want to talk about was the player of the year within the Missouri Valley Conference. And we've said it all year long. It's really been a roller coaster a bit and the teams have been so good within the league. A lot of teams have been good because they haven't necessarily been reliant on just one superstar. where we have in the past. What's curious to me is there is the potential of this happening for what would be the third time. But since 2014, Ken Palm has had a metric on his website of basically first team all league, but he also says his player of the year rankings. So he does his top 5 guys, and typically those are, hey, these are what would be my player of the year candidates as first team. There's been 2 times where the eventual player of the year has not been in his top 5. Only 2 times. Tyler Lundblade is not in his top 5, which to me is crazy. Tyler Lundblade is one of, he is a first team guy. There is no, that to me, that shouldn't even be an argument. It's laughable that that's even being brought up. But that's where the Ken Palm metrics at times can get a little bit out of whack to me. But the other 2 times that it happened was 2017. Paris Lee from Illinois State won the Larry Bird Player of the Year. Darrell Willis was number 1. Marcus McDuffie, both of those guys from Wichita State. Milton Doyle from the Ramblers was 3rd. Shaquille Morris from Wichita State was 4th. Jaylen Brown from Evansville was 5th. And 2018 was the other, and that was Clayton Custer, who was a tremendous guard for Loyola, the Ramblers. Alize Johnson was 1st in the league that year. Malik Yarborough was 2nd from Illinois State. Cameron Krutwig on that same Rambler team was 3rd. And then you had Bennett Cook from Northern Iowa, 4th, and then Ryan Taylor was 5th. Those are the only 2 times it's happened. There's no doubt a potential third time could be if Tyler Lundblade wins the Larry Bird Player of the Year, would make it. And I think you and I both agree, I don't think there is a guy that could win it outside of Tyler Lundblade and Jaquan Johnson. Whoever wins it out of those 2, I think you can't be upset either way. Now, there's going to be Belmont folks are going to be upset if Tyler Lundblade gets it. Bradley folks are going to be upset if Jaquan Johnson doesn't get it. But to me, both of them are deserving. I can see why whomever in the league votes for whomever of those guys. For me, what I kind of helped broke down was I looked at league-only stats, and I just went through, okay, category leaders and some of the specialty leaders. And there's 13 categories that typically on the Valley stat sheet that you could have. Jaquan Johnson, and they do about the top 20 in those categories. So it's your top 20 players in the league. He appears in 6 of the 13 categories. Tyler Lundblade was 4 of the 13. If you look at 30-point games this year, 30-point games in league play, Jaquan Johnson's had 2 of them. Tyler Lundblade had 1. And then if you take those away from games they've scored 20 or more, Jaquan Johnson has scored 6 20-point games. Tyler Lundblade 5. To me, when you kind of add all those things together, and look, the other factor for me that's important when I vote, I could get ridiculed for this, and that's okay. You can clip it and ridicule me for it. A lot of it is how you do against the team we cover. And Southern did a great job on Tyler Lundblade for 2 games. And that does not mean that we're not taking away that dude is not an NBA caliber player and that he's not even in this conversation. I don't want that to be taken away either. But Jaquan Johnson was the reason, and I say the reason, but he was a major reason why Bradley is finishing 2nd in the league, also beat the Salukis twice in the 2 games. He was just really impressive for me, and that's why Jaquan Johnson earned my vote for Larry Bird Player of the Year. I know that was kind of a Rodney Watson ramble there for me, kind of going through, and there's not really a question there for you. Do you disagree with how I looked at it, broke it around? How would you view it and look at the Player of the Year voting in our league?
Well, that's why I asked Kevin Lehman where his eyes go. I think everyone looks at it different, but one thing that you don't do, and most people that have any savvy, they're not just going to go look at points scored. That's the big thing. I think when you talk about Ken Palm, I can't answer for that resource, but the difference between Johnson and Lundblade is that Johnson's a stat stuffer. I mean, he's top 10 in so many different categories. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I have 7. That included minutes played. Lundblade, terrific. I mean, his percentages both at the line and at the 3-point line, his 3 points made, his scoring ability, those things. And so those are all the argument. But something I've talked about. You talked about Sharnowski. I mean, for me, yes. When I started adding up numbers in conference play, and to your question, how would I look at it if I had a vote, which I'm glad I don't, I would look at stats stats, individual stats within league. So it's apples to apples, especially now that's round robin. Um, and with that, if I was going just straight stats, Johnson would be the most productive player in the league, most valuable player of the year. Yeah, maybe, but I put a lot into who wins the league, both for coach of the year, player of the year, and Lungblade. I would have no gripe to see him player of the year, very deserving. Uh, you're the one that brought up Sharnowski, and when you did, my eyes got big. Like, whoa, where did that come from? You also brought up early in January, and this is how the league has really had its runs. You brought up Jackson from Murray State at the time back in January. I'm like, whoa, where did that come from? And then you start looking at the numbers, like, yeah, not only his ability to score, but the other things that a guy like Jackson does, and his assists and his assists to turnover ratio, things like that. And then, the conversation with our friend from Valpo about Paul, about Fred King being player of the year. At that time, it's like, I come on. And then you look at the numbers, it's like, yes, he's scoring, he's rebounding on offense and defense. So those are the things that I look at and I like. If Johnson is player of the year, I'm right there in line with him. He's got a long future in the game, but that has nothing to do with this season. His ability to stat stuff, but Lungblade, without question, is I think because they nominated him, they know his value to the team. And, we talk about the bus at Northern Iowa, how important that is. We don't know what his value is that's not on the stat sheet.
Well, and the other thing to keep in mind, too, with Tyler Lundblade, he is clearly number one on everybody's scouting report, but he affects how everybody guards Belmont. Just because, he didn't score a point in the game here in Carbondale. Does that mean he had no impact on the game? No. He gets so much attention to himself. That's where at times, and he still, by the way, has tremendous scoring ability in the games. And to your point, Drew Sharnowski was not nominated. So he wasn't a choice, which for Belmont, I think it's extremely smart not splitting the vote in terms of not nominating Drew Sharnowski for Player of the Year. Now, how you handle that with hopefully Drew's okay with that, in terms of all the, because he's deserving, man. I mean, you look at those categories too, by my math, which isn't our dub math. I know you were really good at math back in the day, but he was in over half of the categories in the top 20. He just affects the game in so many different ways, and that's not even getting into the KenPom analytical data. There is a case to be made for Drew Sharnowski as Player of the Year because he was on the best team as well. Just Tyler Lundblade scores it at such an extremely high clip. But to my point, and what I wanted to make too is, I did vote for Jaquan Johnson as Player of the Year, but Tyler Lundblade's deserving. I think both those guys are really deserving. And if you want to talk about most impactful, you use the word valuable. It's hard to always gauge that, but I think everybody knows in our league, and I know they would say it just because it's their own guy too. You take Jaquan Johnson off of Bradley, that's not a 2 seed. And that's not to say that he is just completely their team. There's Alex Hubert's had a great year. There's other pieces that have helped them along the way. But man, I don't know if there's anybody that's impacted winning specifically more to a team than him. And another guy who deserves consideration, Elijah Crawford. I mean, you talk about a guy who you want to talk about impact winning when he was out versus when he's played. It's a completely different vibe. Just UIC's ending to the year obviously was a little salty there in Terre Haute in that game. But if you want to talk about guys who just have had impact on winning games for their team this year, Elijah Crawford, clearly a great example for that as too. Just Coach of the Year was the other one I wanted to highlight. Clearly voted for Casey. He's Coach of the Year. I don't think that's any debate. Brian Wardle got my second vote just because of getting to the 2 seed line and finishing second was really important. And Rob Eson earned my third vote for Coach of the Year. I'm sure for you probably don't have much disagreement there with those 3 guys in terms of the Coach of the Year.
Yeah, I don't know how I would flip 2 and 3, but those are the 3, and I don't think it's arguable. Just like Player of the Year, anything beyond that, then I'm scratching my head saying we got to take a look at how we're doing this. But man, you win the league in the fashion that Belmont did it. don't underscore the coaching and coaching the coaches on their staff. Like I see that part of it too. I think about the great coaches I coach for, and Rich Herron and Bruce Weber and Matt Painter and Chris Lowry, the impact they had on us assistant coaches that allowed us to push and to work guys out and to work them out with purpose, to have eyes on the floor. I see that part of it in Coach of the Year too. And I see that with certainly with Casey Alexander, just, and you talk about Brian Wardle, brand new coaching staff, a guy that's been there a long time, and now he flips his staff over. Guys go do some different things, and so that's another part. Rob Eson, it's second year, getting everything together. But Casey Alexander, that skill development, man, that 41% shooting from three, the 51% in league play overall from the field. Gosh, that takes coaching. Players become better skilled players, okay? But they've got to have direction. There's a reason why professional golfers have an old guy standing behind them watching their swing. They're the best in the world, but they still need help. And, man, Coach Alexander, Belmont staff, that it's really a staff award, Luke. It's certainly people get lost in the coach's name that's on the trophy, but every assistant coach deserves one, and they did a terrific job with their staff, with their team.
Yes, and their staff. And look, I know Casey would be, if he should be Coach of the Year, would be very surprised if he's not. But that will no doubt be, I'm sure, what he will echo, that it is a staff award, because they've done a tremendous job at Belmont, and the Salukis hope that they could have the potential to see them in this tournament. So let's go ahead and look at this Arch Madness bracket. Coach Watson, the Salukis, of course, being the 8th seed, they will open up against 9-seeded Drake. These games, of course, will be on Thursday. 7th-seed Valpo, they had the opportunity, if they would have won their last game at Evansville, to sneak into the top 5 and earn a bye. They do not. They'll play Indiana State, which 2 really good games with the Sycamores in the regular season for them. UNI, they earned the 6th seed. They will play 11th seed at Evansville on Thursday. Going to Friday, Murray State and UIC, they will be in the 4-5 game. Murray State is the 4 seed, UIC as the 5 seed. Number 1 seed Belmont, they will get the winner of SIU and Drake. Number 2 seed Bradley, they'll get the winner of number 7 Valpo and number 10 Indiana State. And then you have Illinois State in game number 7 of the tournament. They will take on the winner of UNI and Evansville. Just looking at the initial bracket, let's take Southern out of it for right now, Coach Watson. Kind of the part where my eyes go is, don't sleep on a team like Indiana State. Indiana State, of course, they had 2 great games with Valpo. You just saw what they did against UIC. Again, we know the defensive issues with Indiana State this year. That is clear and evident. I know Valpo is probably going to be extremely hungry after losing the last game at Evansville. But then you look at the potential matchup on Friday with Bradley. Indiana State led for, I think, 37 minutes in Peoria before they ultimately lost. Went to triple overtime with Bradley in Terre Haute. That's kind of a path that I look at. Like, again, you look at these teams on Thursday, like I'm telling you, if you are Belmont, Bradley, and Illinois State, there's really not, I mean, Evansville beat Illinois State in the Ford Center. So even if Evansville knocks off Northern Iowa on Thursday, the Redbirds aren't sitting there on Friday going, man, this is a cakewalk. I mean, that's what's amazing about this tournament this year is you can really look at any of those matchups and go, yeah, I could really see it going that way.
What's changed the game of basketball, Luke, all in all? If you look at the big change in basketball in the last 30-some years, that three-point line has changed the game. There's no doubt about it. And I know you guys are listening to us right now saying, what are they babbling about number 10 and 11? Those 2 teams can shoot the ball. What Indiana State can do is they can carve you up. If you are looking anything past that day, they will get you. As soon as your eyes go this way, that guy goes right on the baseline side and shoots a layup off an assist. And you get a few of those possessions that kind of mess you up. You don't have another day left. You know what I mean? It's like, you get beat during the regular season. You hate it. It just stinks on the way home, but you know you can right your ship because you got another game coming. Your mindset is, we got no other day coming. We got to get this stop. So it's going to take an enormous lot of discipline for everybody in this tournament on the defensive end. But that's where Indiana State can really cause some problems because they really can carve you in the half court offense. You get in a situation where the Enterprise Center the dome gets really big, and all of a sudden that basket looks a little bit further away than what it looks in your arena, and it takes you a while to get dialed in. Then that becomes a little weird. Evansville, again, there's not a guy, and we saw it with Trent Hundley. Trent Hundley came and he started firing threes like it was nothing. And it just takes one of those finding your magic level for those 40 minutes on a Thursday. And then Friday, man, again, the Friday thing is a lot like what we saw on the good side on Sunday, is that, if you can hang in there with the team, but like you brought up with Evansville, it took the 38 and a half minutes before it really were to show up. What happens if they have a 2-possession lead at that timeout with a minute 30 to go? And all of a sudden, their psyche's in a little different spot where if they do have a turnover, we just get a stop. We'll be okay. It is going to be a fun tournament. You brought up something to me yesterday about the Murray State game with UIC. Man, that's got a storyline to it.
Yeah,
Woo,
absolutely.
that's going to be fun to watch on Friday when Crawford gets an early exit with a minute into the game, and all of a sudden now it looks like Murray's going to get him for 40 minutes.
Yes. I hope, and who knows, it may be even more than 40 minutes with how competitive those games have been. And keep in mind with the tournament format this year, I know, unfortunately, for those here in Carbondale, haven't had to think this far out in front, but the championship game on Sunday is now at 11 a.m. So it used to be at 1 o'clock. So just think of the turnaround time. Even when you're the 1 seed of this tournament, which is Belmont, the 1 seed will play at noon on Friday. They would then turn around 2:30 on that Saturday, and then 11 a.m. on Sunday, which, of course, everybody would sign up for that because it means you're in the championship game. But that's where being at least in the early part of this bracket, Coach Watson, you think of the teams that play at 5 o'clock on that Saturday, you're not getting out of that arena until probably 9 o'clock in terms of the media, the media you got to do, et cetera, all of it. And you got to be right back in there early the next day. So that's kind of the one little side note of how the Arch Madness bracket looks this year is the tournament final getting moved up. And you got daylight savings time, I believe, factored in there on Sunday too, so you lose that hour.
How many teams in the league practice in the morning? I'm aware of one team that does, and not a great fan of it myself. That of course is not my voice. It's Coach Nagy's decision on that. But Southern practices in the morning. They've done it all year long. They practice on morning, like after the Drake overtime loss. They practice the next morning on Thursday. You never know how that thing's going to factor. I know this. Those dudes are used to getting up early, and I'm not sure every college student is.
Yep. No, that's a very good point. You can see how that goes. So let's go ahead and break down first Southern's matchup with Drake here on Thursday in Arch Madness to start it off. 2 games where the first game, Saluki's led by as many as 17, couldn't hold it in Carbondale, come back. Jalen Quinn's had 2 good games against the Salukis, but man, just key plays down the stretch. Southern, it was really their defense and free throw shooting that got them over the hump in game number 2, Coach Watson. These have not been 2 easy games by any stretch.
Oh, no question, man. Southern played hard. Gosh, they went to Des Moines and they were dialed in. Gosh, I was so impressed with how hard they played and actually they got out rebounded, which surprises me, but Southern shot the ball not great. I mean, from the field, it was overall just under 35%, but they made 10 threes. That was a game where they got 30 points from behind the line, and they outshot themselves from the three-point line than they did, overall from the field. Made key plays down the stretch, earned that win, but it comes back to 3-minute mark when Davion Sykes had a big steal, and he really cracked the code, and that was part of it. And then just down the stretch, they handled the ball when they had to. They made free throws when they had to. Got away with a 5-point win, and they really earned it.
Damian Mayo got in foul trouble in that second game, and man, he could ill afford. to get in the foul trouble because of how important he was, Coach Watson, especially in that second game because Damian Mayo was 8 of 10 from the floor, 5 of 6 from three. He had 22 points against Drake that night. Again, he scored. If you look at the 2 games against Drake this year for Damian Mayo, he's averaging 20 and a half points in those 2 games. 41 points is what he has scored in those 2 games. 6 of 12 from three, 15 of 26 from the floor, 5 assists for him in the 2 games against Drake. Damian Mayo is a key factor, and especially he's used to this tournament, man. He is used to the tournament, playing in the tournament. This is going to be his 4th Arch Madness going back from Missouri State to his time now here at SIU.
It's going to be interesting to see how they guard him and who guards him. And it doesn't come to mind right now. I don't watch film of it. I don't go back, dive in like that. But it's going to be interesting to see how Drake goes about it. I think there are several matchups and several key players for Drake that's going to be interesting for Southern. I think Larson, their point guard, he as my memory recollects, he was really strong. He was playing really well at that stretch when Drake came back and was able to tie it up late and then got Southern in overtime. And he seemed like he wasn't physically the same guy. Maybe that was because we had talked to Michael a little bit, and he maybe gave us a little bit of a heads up about, maybe he wasn't quite 100% like so many players aren't exact. The guy that broke his bone in his foot, who played 14 games, set a long stretch for his recovery, came back in the last game of the season. He's going to be there. What kind of player is he? He looks like he's very similar to Prince Aligbe, kind of a bull in a china shop type guy, maybe a fuzz better at the three-point line, but mainly a power player, a rebounder, a guy that can really put bruises on you like Prince can. I think he's a real key matchup. Shetler's real, we know Jalen Quinn is a scorer, and where he is physically, I'm not sure. He wasn't as effective in their last game, but Shetler's a guy that he's like the guys we talked about. He was an Indiana State guy, and he played like those guys. He's a terrific three-point shooter that can really stretch the game, give you extra possessions with the three-point shooting. I think those are the guys Southern, I'll be curious to talk to the coaches and then their scouting report, but you lose by 3, you win by 5. Man, this one's a toss-up, especially on a neutral court. And who really, really wants to extend their season. I think we're going to see that in the effort meter come Thursday.
51% of the scoring for Drake in the 2 games have come from 2 guys, Shetler and Quinn. Quinn, of course, averaging 22 points per game in the 2 games against SIU. Shetler averaging 13 a game with 6 made threes. Drake has not shot the 3 well against Southern this year. The 2 games combined, 15 of 59. Which is right at 25%, but the Salukis haven't shot it well either. 13 of 52 from 3 against Drake, and that's no doubt going to be a factor in this game on Thursday in Arch Madness. Again, that's how you look at it, Coach Watson. It is a game-by-game approach, but if you do look down the line for Southern, and if you are fortunate enough to extend your season, how do you see potential matchups with a Belmont and then Murray and UIC? Those are 2 teams that Southern got swept by that they would potentially see if they could even get past the number 1 seed in the Belmont Bruins.
I think you combine that conversation instead of just looking at, the Belmont and the next 2. I think there are a couple controllables that I like to talk about, some things that will travel on your bus if you take them with you. Number 1, the physicality. Now, part of that kind of depends on how the flow of the game goes and how, how the whistle's going and where physicality comes in terms of the free throws and all that stuff. But Southern has a reputation for being physical, and man, the last 3 weeks they've shown it. And it's really been a big part of their success. That I mentioned that play early in the first half where Southern needed to flip their energy, and Mayo, who's very physical guard, who's been very effective on three-point shooters with his physicality because he's got a big body. He's a senior. He can ride you a step out as you're cutting to get some separation to get a 3. Prince Aligbe is another guy that he's long. He can make you uncomfortable because you're not quite sure which side of where he is when he's guarding you from behind, especially out on the court. But physicality is a major control that Southern's got to bring. They can't worry about Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. They got to worry about Thursday. But the reality is as long as they're playing, physical is going to be a big factor. Obviously, the part that isn't controllable is the three-point shooting necessarily, but what is controllable about that is their Southern's confidence. In the first couple games, they're going to go against. They have the chance to go against. Well, actually, potentially in all three games, they're going to go against. The one team that can really guard you and take you out of your spots would be UIC. The other two, they're very tremendous offensively, and Southern's got to be great. That's the other controllable. Southern's game plan. What I like about Southern going to this tournament, they're not tweaking their game plan nearly as noticeable as they had been in non-conference and even in January. They're much more settled into how they're playing. The switching is getting better. That's a controllable. The switching, the footwork on defense that leads to positioning and legal guarding position, which allows you to play physical. Certainly the rebounding. Coach was really not happy before the Evansville game with their rebounding, and that because he knows that's something that travels. Southern's ability to go get balls, the physicality, the defensive rebounding. Southern's guards have to control and take away offensive rebounds out of the guard position. If a team like they get to play against a team like UIC, they have killed Southern at the guard position in offensive rebounds. That's something you can control, and you got to be tough and physical to take that away. So those are the main areas to give them a chance to get that 11 o'clock game. You've got to bring that on Thursday, and it's got to continue as long as you're allowed to keep playing your season.
I think the number to watch for SIU this year, Coach Watson, when you're kind of determining, hey, we know Southern's not been a great three-point shooting team. That's been evident and has been talked about at length on this podcast throughout the year. But to me, the number that has been kind to Southern this year has been the number 7. When they have made 7 or more threes in 7 games this year. They've won 6 of them. The lone game they did not was Belmont at home. They went 9 for 25 from 3 that night. Belmont won the game 73-68. But all the other situations, now 2 of those include 2 games where Southern made 10. They made 10 at Drake and Des Moines. They made 10 against High Point on the road back in non-conference. But to me, that's where when you're looking at, okay, like, look, we're not at Southern to say you got to make 10 or more in a game. You've done that twice. It's not been consistent enough to do it. And not saying that 7 threes has to be that number. But with how this Saluki team guards and with how they also do in terms of shot selection offensively, if they can make around 7 threes, just around that number, I think you're really going to like where you're at from an SIU angle.
Those shots have got to come from the right people. And
Yes.
You and I have not been bashful about when they come from the wrong people. It's obvious to anyone that listens to our broadcast and watches Saluki fans know. You guys know who our shooters are. Mayo, and I don't want to go down the list, but certainly Mayo's shooting the ball extremely well. Drew was really good and has the ability to be good, especially when it's in rhythm and it's certain spots on the floor. But that isn't something that's the democracy of 3-point shooting does not exist in this tournament. That not everyone has the freedom, the right to experience. You have every guy that comes to that game has the right to take their best shot, and everybody that comes in has a best shot and a counter to the best shot. But when Southern's getting Mayo in a good groove, in a good rhythm, especially when the ball goes side to side, when there are long rotations, okay, and they're going to have a chance to see some teams that when they get in long rotations, they're going to not get up and challenge shots like Southern does. So that's going to be capable, but those shots have to come from the right people. And then, the other side to the 3-point shooting is when people extend out on you, then you drop that shoulder and get to the lane, because that's an area where Southern can really score the ball.
Well, and keep in mind too, we haven't talked about it a ton when it comes to Drake, and I understand a lot of the pieces are different, but this has clearly been a program that's had success in St. Louis here in this last decade. Of course, they've won 3 consecutive Arch Madness tournaments. No program has ever won 4. No one ever won 3 in a row until Drake did it, tying Southern, who did, of course, when you were on staff, Coach Watson, there in the 90s. But what's really amazing to me is when you look at the tournament history, I mean, this is just the run that Drake has been on, and it's such a tip of the cap to Drake and how they've done it and what they've done here during this stretch. Of course, they made the title game in 25, 24, 23 because they won all those years. They were in the title game in 22. They were in the title game in 21. They are trying to go to their sixth straight Sunday in St. Louis. And also, if you really want some fun, like background information too, guess who shares the same team hotel in St. Louis? Drake and Southern Illinois. It's the Battle of the Hilton at the ballpark when it comes down to it for some of that flavor. But even, look, and this game, as we have said, and we're going to say it time and time again, it is going to be just as stressful as it was a year ago for Southern to get past Indiana State on a last-second shot to win it, which ironically is the lone one-point game that Southern's been involved in when it comes to the Valley Tournament. But what I also hope does get talked about and brought up a bit too, Coach Watson, and look, we said it was great to win in Des Moines, but when you look at since 91, which is the first time that the tournament got moved in St. Louis, Drake and Southern have played each other 6 times in the tournament since it's been there in 91. Southern hasn't beaten Drake in this tournament since 2007. They have ended Southern's season 4 straight times when they have played in this tournament, back to 2010. And then, of course, recently, they've ended Southern's season 3 of the last 4 years in 22, 23, and 25. Man, it's time to get some revenge, brother. I know there's no other way to really put that. But to think, I mean, here are the 2 wins against Drake in this tournament since it got moved in 91. Haven't played a ton in that time. The last win before that was the year you guys won it in 94, 95. You beat Drake when they were the 6th seed in the tournament, beat them 85-65 in 1995, which would have been the final year of the three-peat, right? That was the final year of the three-peat when you guys won 3 in a row. So, I mean, like, man, it's, I know people get tired and look, this current team doesn't hold all of that. I mean, I understand it, but man, Drake has ended Southern's 4 straight. They've ended Southern seasons 4 straight times when they've had the opportunity in this tournament. Salukis will try to flip that here on Thursday.
Yeah, this team may not own it, but that banner sitting right behind you, it owns it. And they're a part of that banner. It's like you and I are. It's time. We're due. Let's celebrate that 77 team who won the very first conference tournament. I think those guys, I mean, what a phenomenal team, arguably the best team ever to play at SIU. And they certainly, I mean, arguably one of the most talented teams ever. But, I get a kick out of when Mike Kern sends out his information to us from the Missouri Valley Conference office. He has to put down the very first winner were the Salukis. And that just continues to fill us with pride.
Now let's see if you know this part of that. How many games did Southern win in that tournament to win the title?
I think 2. Was it
1?
Did they get
Just
that?
one
Was a
game.
weird number.
So I know. Yes, just 1 game in 1977. Which now that you did it, I'm going to pull it up here real quick here on the podcast, just so folks can see it too, and I'll post this as well. But back then, the tournament, there were 7 teams that went. Seeds 7 through 5 played on Monday, February 28th. For those that are wondering, it was Tulsa against West Texas State. West Texas State won 96-81. Drake beat Bradley 80-73. Then it went to the second round games, which one was Tuesday, March 1st, which was New Mexico State. They lost to West Texas State 89-86. Wichita beat Drake 67-63. Then there was the semifinal, which was West Texas State against Wichita State. West Texas State won that game on Friday, March 4th. And then on Saturday, March 5th, the Salukis, the 1 seed, their lone game of the tournament, they beat West Texas State 82-69. So how about West Texas State? They were the team back then that tried to do what Southern's trying to do, to play on the first day of the tournament and then get all the way to the last day. But yeah, that's what's funny about that 1977 tournament is, yes, it was the very first one. Southern wins it, but guess what? They were the 1 seed that year. They only had to play 1 game.
It's the way it should have been. I love the way that was set up. How about
Hey,
if Belmont had to play?
Belmont with
Belmont gets
yeah.
one game on Sunday at 11. Oh, I don't know. It's an 11 o'clock game. I'm not. It's going to be a hard one for us. But and I'm sorry to Saluki fans for not being able to have this. But I'm going to let everyone maybe get on your websites. I'd love to know, and maybe we'll provide that for you sometime. How many NBA players were in that tournament? 77. I know
Yeah.
West Texas had a kid from Chicago that I think ended up playing for the Six. I mean, and then Wichita was loaded. We had at least two on there, and just this league has got such great history of great players, and it's still got history of great players in the tournament in 2026. It's what a just a congratulations to Missouri Valley for keeping this 50-year-old tournament going, and for these players. And we talked to Prince about it after the game at Evansville, what he had heard about this tournament. A guy that's played in the Big East tournament in Madison Square Garden, the mecca of basketball. And then also in the ACC tournament, I believe, is that the oldest college tournament going? And this tournament's going to be fun. It's what had, just a side note, since we're talking about the tournament in general, in '93, when we finally won the tournament, everyone talked about just how great the NCAA tournament was and how big time and first class and how you're treated and just how it goes. And frankly, Luke, and this is the honest to goodness truth, the Missouri Valley tournament at the old Checker Dome was better run than the first round in Chicago that we played. It was like
Against Duke, right?
Yeah, I mean, we got smoked, but even that in itself, the energy in the Checker Dome in St. Louis in the Valley tournament, compared to the NCAA tournament, and sure we drew a really tough one, but it's like, I'm sorry, the NCAA tournament was not a better tournament. Now, obviously in prestige and the money you get in return, but in terms of how the tournament went and the excitement, not even close.
Well, you look at SIU in terms of this tournament, just some of the history notes as well I was going through. They've been in 7 title games since the tournament moved to St. Louis. They, of course, haven't been in the title game since 2007 when they lost to Creighton. But kind of one of the things that stood out to me and just kind of going the year by year was when you look at when Southern's made the semifinals in St. Louis. They've made the semifinals 16 times in St. Louis. And what really stood out to me, Coach Watson, was in the 2000s, I'm curious if this will connect with you too, so Southern made the semifinals in 2000, 2002, 2003, 2004, 2005, went to 06 and 07 as well. But in 2000, 02, 03, 04, and 05, played Missouri State every year in the semifinals.
Conspiracy. It's a conspiracy, Luke.
I mean, 2 and 3 of those were losses. 2 of them were wins. But man, like when everyone, that's what, when you talk about the history, I know we're more rambling instead of really talking, but it's, that's why you missed that rivalry. Because back then, I mean, with Missouri State, man, for you guys in 93, when you were finally, to go for the 2-peat, or actually, I'm sorry, that was the first year you guys won it, was 93. You had to beat Missouri State on your way to the title game that year too.
Yeah, what's funny about when you say those things and you talk about players having short-term memory on missed shots, you got to get the next play. I know for me, and maybe it's just an age thing, but I don't even know who beat us in 07. I probably Creighton, because I mean, who knows?
It was Creighton.
Yeah, I mean, it's just when you win it, you know those, you remember those, but the other games. But what's so important for those of us that have been on the floor, whether you play, whether you coach, you broadcast, whoever's involved on the floor, just the excitement of the tournament and how fast the games go and how fast the tournament goes. And it's just like, it's truly, for me, it's like a blur. And unless I pull out the stats and look at, just look at things, it is such a joy. And I would really hope I'm speaking for a lot of people, for those, and again, in all those roles, for that to be a part of your career, whether it's your professional career or your playing career, man, you look back on that as fond memories. I mean, my family still talks about it and about going and to the tournament and such being a so impactful part of the year, and I think others do as well.
Now, remind me, your first year in Carbondale on staff with Coach Heron was what year again? Remind me your very first year.
It was the 88-89 season where the tournament was at Wichita.
Yes. So here is what's amazing. And I know you are not going to like this, what I'm about to do. Okay. So I know you're not going to like this at all. Okay. But Southern Illinois has been a part of 10 conference title games. That, of course, includes the campus site games that you're talking about or that were not in St. Louis. You realize you've been a part of 9 of those 10?
Wow.
Like you in 1989, lost to Creighton in the title game. 1990, that was the year. I know this is going to bring up sour grapes, but at Illinois State, when you played Illinois State
We
in the
got cheated in that
championship,
game. We got cheated. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding, Jim Bain. God rest his soul.
in 1990. But yes, I mean that's what's amazing, Coach Watson, and what's crazy. And I know, like for you, just when you think of your mind, that for you've been a part of the title games in 89, 90, 93, 94, 95, 02, 03, 06, and 07.
And every one of them were fun. I mean, obviously the wins were great, and the loss. Here's a kicker, Luke. About and for fans, maybe you guys will appreciate this, maybe not. In '90, when we got beat at Illinois State, okay, we had won 26 games. Now you had the Sagarin rating back in those days, and that came out the next day on Monday morning, in USA Today. So you didn't have. I'm not even sure we had computers and the internet, but all that said. We didn't really know. Now the committee knew. The committee knew. They knew. They had enough data that they knew, and our schedule wasn't good enough, unfortunately. And we had beaten Penn State, who was still in whatever league that was in before they joined the Big Ten. But that wasn't a good. We just didn't have real good wins. But when you look at if you look at our non-conference schedule today versus what it was then, you're like, what are you talking about? These are really good wins. But 26 didn't do it. We were frustrated. Coach Heron he made national news because he let his feelings be known. And you know what? That's great. That's great. That was really good for mid-majors because he spoke for a lot of people on that. Were they correct? Yeah, probably. But the reality is where I was going, when you get beat in those games for about an hour, it's like the end of the world. And then an hour later, you're about halfway home. You get by the time you get to Pinckneyville on the bus, you're like, all right, got to quit pouting. We got to go. We're going to the NIT or we're doing whatever else. A lot of those times we got at-large bids, and so you're like, okay, we had a week to sit on it and worry about it. But man, just so cool to be a part of a great tournament, and I just can't stress enough. And if any of you people are listening to this and you're thinking you're on the fence on whether you want to come to St. Louis, hey, the weather's starting to break. Go to St. Louis, get around Saluki people. Let's have fun. Let's cheer on the Salukis. Go have fun. Go out to dinner. Maybe go to the casino or whatever else you do. There's so many fun things. Let's bring in spring the right way, and let's will this team into something that might be really special.
Yeah, it could be a really special week. And as we've said, and when we'll end on this, and by the way, your note about Penn State, they were in the A10 prior to joining the Big Ten Conference. They were in the A10 from 1982 to 1991. But to your point too is, and I hope that our fans and I'm okay putting this on the record. I don't think you would mind it because I've said it, and I said it to you back over the summer. I wasn't around this team throughout the year. But in terms of team chemistry, in terms of guys really enjoying being around each other, there's only one other team I can equate what this Saluki team has been like behind the scenes, and that was the team that ultimately went to the NIT title game at Indiana State. I was only around them for the summer. I wasn't around them for the full year because that was going into my first year here at SIU. But in terms of how that team interacted with each other, how they act, just the friendships, hanging around each other. Like I know, look, we're in this day and age, right, of professional college basketball. You and I get it. We talk about all the time, and that is a legit and very fair point. Get it. I understand it's a new era. But in terms of that locker room piece and in terms of guys getting along, this is the best team I've been around as close to that. Now, does that mean this team's going to go on a run? I mean, that team in Indiana State fell just short in the Arch Madness title game, and they should have went to the NCAA tournament. It's clear they were a clear snub of the tournament and deserved to go that year. But that's why I've been telling you since the summer. I've told anybody that would talk to me. I'm not going to necessarily say how great this team is going to be from a basketball skills standpoint, whatever. That's not for me to decide. But at least in terms of guys loving each other and truly being around each other, this team really is up there. And I hope that really shows this week in St. Louis.
How would you rank that Indiana State team with what I'm about to say? Because I'm not nearly around them. You're around them every single day, practice and everything else. I'm only with them, mainly on the road. I'm a little bit at home, but not really. That doesn't really count. But what I've noticed with this team that's different than the ones I'm thinking about that I was with at SIU, and we had teams that had really good chemistry. We had really good teams that, if you really knew what went on behind the scenes, you'd be like, whoa. Um, the freshmen on this team seem to be a big part of this chemistry. Walsh is a big factor. Jalen Haynes, even Daniel is part of it because he can take a joke. I combine that with Prince Aligbe. He's got personality, and Drew Steffi's got a lot of personality. You've got veteran older guys that really mesh with young guys. Is that something is that a trend or is that a coincidence?
It could be a little bit of a coincidence. I know for that Indiana State team specifically, they were so dominated by. Now Eli Shetler was a freshman on that team, didn't play much of a role. Derek Vorst was a freshman on that team. Again, didn't have much of a role until actually later in the year. He had some pretty good NIT games, if I remember off the top of my head. But that team, I mean, you talk about the Julian Larry, Isaiah Swope, Jason Kent, Robbie Avila, Ryan Conwell. I mean, those guys, I mean, the guys who played, and that was an Indiana State team too. That wasn't, I say not extremely deep. Coach Schertz really only played about 6 or 7 guys, and all guys were all conference, which that took a lot of complaining from throughout the league, but those guys were deserving of that and those honors too with how well they played. But that was more of just, I guess, kind of shared continuity. But I get your point. Again, I wasn't around them throughout the year, so I can't really speak to it like the personalities you brought up. Like there is, and we're not just saying this to say it, like Luke Walsh has been a very huge key piece to this team this year. Has he scored a point for this team? No, he hasn't. But in terms of his personality, what he brings to practice, the competitive edge to Daniel and Jalen, I mean, man, this year, though, that is why I would say this team is different, where it's almost the youth of the team has really helped remind everybody of what's great about college basketball, is the youth, if that makes sense and if that answers your question.
It does, and it goes back to my greatest concern when this whole NIL thing started. I really thought we'd have 15 guys going 15 different directions in 15 cars every day. And that is not the case. And I will tell you, I give a lot of credit to our coaching staff for really bringing in some personalities, some characters that they recognize that. Because I'm telling you, I got a lot of buddies out there that know that they got to change course next year. They got to have some people on the bus, and give the coaches a lot of credit for bringing in this group. Because I'll tell you, man, I love being around these guys on the road. They and it's genuine. It's not fake. It's not hard pressed. When they give you dap, normally they're the ones sticking their hand out first, and that's not on courtside. That's in a hotel room, and that stuff goes a long way with old people.
Yeah, it does. And I think to further prove your point, and we'll end on this note and wrap it up, are there areas in terms of the basketball talent evaluation and this NIL piece and et cetera, that all those areas, look, there are so many programs throughout the country that are trying to figure that part out of saying, you know what, we missed in terms of what we prioritized in terms of a monetary value on a specific player. That, no question, happens. And there are a lot of schools that are learning that lesson going throughout the year. My point, though, is what is really great, and this is why I tip the cap, starting with Coach Nagy, to his staff. There's nobody on this roster, and I mean nobody. I'm going to that length. There is nobody on this roster from a character, from an individual standpoint, where you're saying we completely whiffed, and where you're going, that guy's an issue in the locker room. And that is to Isaiah Stafford right now, who isn't playing. He can't really impact. He's been tremendous in practice, just being there, sitting there, encouraging guys. Like, that's hard now. That is hard. And through there's no doubt the Italian evaluation piece and everything that's important too. But that locker room and that mixture, man, you've been the head guy and putting that together. It's not easy. And I want to make sure, if this is one of our final podcasts that we do this year, I hope we're doing an NCAA tournament preview after what's a remarkable run here this weekend. But if this turns out to be one of the final podcasts, I'm telling you, and our fans too, it's not going to be because there was a bad locker room. That is the furthest thing from this team this year. And to me, that's what you can hold on to. And this staff and the program deserve absolutely full credit for that.
And I come back to say, because those guys are representing that banner behind you, and they're doing it exactly like every Saluki alum, every supporter, every friend of the program expects out of these guys. And I see it myself, and I am so happy to be a part of that. And these guys really represent our university and our community just in a first-class manner.
Well, it all gets started here on Thursday. It is truly the best time of year. It's a great family reunion for us to see all of our friends throughout the league as well and converse with them. And Salukis will be the first game of the tournament here on Thursday in St. Louis. Again, tip-off will be at 3:30 local time in St. Louis, which means our pregame coverage will begin at 2:30 on Saluki Radio. Big thank you for my partner, Rodney Watson, for joining us and previewing this tournament. We can't wait to bring it to you, Saluki Nation, and hopefully we have some special podcasts coming to you from St. Louis as well. We'll talk to you Thursday from Enterprise Center. Let the madness begin. We are in the month of March, and it starts at the Arch. It's Arch Madness on Thursday. Go Dogs!
This has been Saluki Royalty, the official podcast for Saluki Athletics. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review however you listen. The preceding has been a Learfield presentation on the Saluki Sports Network.